Social activism is an intentional action with the goal of bringing social change to the society and the world at large. It is important to strive to create a better society. We are stronger together. In our project, we have decided to challenge a view held by many countries and individuals that Slovakia is a xenophobic country. Is it? Many commonly held attitudes stem from Slovakia's past, as historically Slovakia was culturally withdrawn. Unlike Western European countries, we had no colonial background. Therefore, Slovakia was never exposed to much cultural interaction with other parts of the world. Regardless, such way of thinking is currently heavily endorsed by our political discourse.
Human mobility can only be addressed effectively by the international community as a whole. It is a global phenomenon that requires global solutions, global response. No country can manage this alone, but together we can set up a human, dignified, and secure mechanism for governing human mobility.
Of course, we also know that better managing migration and mobility requires action beyond the measures listed in this global compact. There is notably a strong link between migration and development, and between this compact and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
Jozef, thanks for joining us. Let's shoot first question. Where does such xenophobia against Muslims come from? If we speak about Slovakia specifically, is it historical or just the part of political agenda of nowadays?
Thank you, Jakub, for question. So, I think on the one hand, Islamophobia in Slovakia has its historical origin, but its current form is the result of policy or political agenda of specific politicians and political parties, which reflects the social sentiment associated with the migrants crisis and its reaction to the media image of Muslims in Slovakia. Historically, Muslims have been portrayed as an aggressor who spread Islam by the sword. This is how children learn about Muslim at school in connection with, for example, Ottoman empires. And it appears in folk literature too, and art, for example, Turčin Poničan, etc. In Slovakia, I think the long-term problem is that most Slovak historical textbooks describe the era of the Ottomans, domination of the Kingdom of Hungary, including parts of today's Slovakia, as a period of darkness in a country's national history, full of oppression and violence by the Turks. This interpretation of history is one of reason for a negative view in Slovak society of Islam. This historical interpretation is also used by some Christian organization or extreme right-wing political parties to spread a negative image of Muslims. In the recent years, the most troubling was the popularity and rise of the right-wing extremist and populist party Kotlebas, People's Party of Slovakia. In addition to that, many politicians followed, and the hatred towards migrants became a very frequent part of the political communication and commonly use this language. Politicians, both government coalition, former government coalition, Smer Social Democracy and Slovak National Party, and parts of the former opposition, I mean Kotlebas or party We Are Family, used Islamophobic statements in the election campaigns. For example, in election 2019, election to European Parliament, and national election or general election in 2020. Some politicians repeatedly ignore the fact that Muslims are citizens of Slovak Republic and that they have the same rights as a Slovak citizen, another Slovak citizen. So Slovak Muslims are repeatedly associated with the terrorism, illegal migration, and labeled as a security threat to Slovakia. And I think that is a main problem of position of Slovak Muslim in Slovak society.
In addition to migration and Islam, there is another topic that has been polarizing Slovak society for decades. Often excluded and living on the margins of society, different, perhaps misunderstood and maladapted. According to the Atlas of Roma communities, there are about 440,000 Roma living in Slovakia, mainly in the south and east of country. But first and foremost, it is the role of the state to work to integrate this 8% minority into the rest of society. We had the opportunity to discuss this topic with Abel Ravasz, former plenipotentiary of the government of the Slovak Republic for Roma communities.
Do you think that people in Slovakia are xenophobic, and the stereotypes, do they exist, or are they just a myth?
I mean, this is a major issue because the Roma in Slovakia are basically the only visual minority that we have, which means that we also have other minority groups, but they are not seen as such by other people, for example, on the street, whereas most Slovaks can racially profile a Roma in Slovakia. So prejudice will be very present in the life of these people. All the misconceptions about the social system and the abuse of the social system by the Roma have been debunked several times. So the statistics are out and they can be readily accessed, which show that most of the social support that the Slovak state gives out doesn't go to the Roma, and people just don't care. I mean, it's really easy to present fake news in this topic, and people will believe that. I can give you a very obvious example of that. We had a project where Roma people were working with wood, which were basically sold to their municipalities by the state foresters. And so they were just creating wooden objects from that. And then a fake news article came out which said that the Roma plenipotentiary at that time, me, is giving out free wood to Roma. Obviously, we put out the right news that this is not true. Nobody is giving free wood to the Roma because that just never happens. But then the fake news had more than 10 times larger reach than the real news. And despite, us trying to put out the real facts, the stereotypes are just there and they're readily believed by so many people in this country. I always I always think that stereotypes are most easily believable for people who don't come into regular contact with Roma. So I really think that this is something to consider, that many times we see very high negative responses about Roma in surveys in areas where they have little to no Roma. Which means that many people will take their information from the media and they will just believe all these negative news that come out. It's really easy to get negative news about the Roma into television or radio, even internet articles, about a murder or something has happened negative. Then obviously it's everywhere. But you're never going to see a piece of news which says nothing happened in the Roma community now, or everyone just went to work, everyone went to school. That's not news. The negative news sells. So that's a problem. And in Slovakia, where there is really the Roma is the largest visual minority, if everything happens, the Roma will be blamed. Very often, it's an easy scapegoat for everyone. I'm not really confident with using the word xenophobia for one particular reason, and that's because that mostly refers to foreigners and not the autochthonous minorities such as the Roma. I would more likely use the word racism in this context because it's based on skin color. It's based on that. So I think this is going to be a problem, and there have been several surveys showing that this has caused economic damage to Slovakia as such. The Roma people are not considered for jobs that they're qualified to do. That's a problem. And many of them are pushed out into the fringes of the society, where, of course, they cannot contribute as well as they could. So that's by the way, that's one of the reasons why I chose to work with this topic, because I believe that if we are failing to integrate the Roma, that's a loss for the whole country.
So is xenophobia an issue in Slovakia? It certainly is, like in many other countries. But it is our job as people, as parents, as citizens of the world to combat xenophobia. So wherever you can, celebrate other cultures. Call out bigotry and hate speech, teach children kindness and understanding, stand up for people being harassed, and support human rights organizations. And together, let's turn xenophobia into xenophobia and enjoy a prosperous and peaceful world.